Yeah, I think the first thing, and where a lot of people maybe make a mistake, is decide what you want out of it. Is it going to be your full-time thing, or is it going to be an investment? Now, if you look at that cycle, like in Edmonton, the last time that hypergrowth happened, 2007 to 9, the average home price went from 100,000 to 300,000 in 2 years, right? I think we're coming into that period. Pretty much my entire family and extended family farmed. No one had really ran a business. Today's episode is going to be a compilation of interviews that I've done on other people's podcasts. If you like the clips, you can go listen to the full episodes. I always love going and getting interviewed on other people's podcasts. You get to know them, get to talk about what we're doing, meet a lot of cool people. The first one is from Ben Spangle's podcast, The Pursuit. He's got a great podcast. It's on Mindset. He's had on a lot of really good guests. He asked me where people should get started in real estate. He gives some examples of where a lot of people would start. I have my opinions on that. Check it out.
People listening, they're thinking, hey, how do I create more different income streams? Maybe they'd like to get into real estate investing in different ways. And so what would be, if I had Shane's quick do's and don'ts, or here's where I would start, maybe that's a better question. You know, I've got my business or my job right now. I've got money coming in. I want to get into the real estate world. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and where a lot of people maybe make a mistake, is decide what you want out of it. Is it going to be your full-time thing, or is it going to be an investment? And those are two totally different things. If it's an investment, you're finding a group or you're finding a person that will help you with it. If you want it to be your full-time thing, that's different. But what I tell people is, like, here's a quick little story of how our first 8-unit building went. So we took it over. It had a very good rent subsidy program in there. So all the rents were guaranteed, vacancy rates guaranteed. Everything was great. Take the building over. Within a couple months, the government canceled that program. So then you're like, ooh, now the rents are going to come down. We're not covered on vacancy. Not a big deal. Great tenant base still. They're all in there. They're grandfathered in. And then within, I think, like 6 months, 3 of the 8 tenants died. And so it's like, now you have huge cleanup costs, and you have all these things that were not expected, right? Yeah. And then you had, we had the boiler go, and we had the hot water tanks go. And we had a lady call because her cabinet door had fall off. She called the health and safety instead of calling us. They went to look, and the railings were 1/8 of an inch too wide. So we had to put new railings in. So, and I tell that story not to like discourage people from ever doing it, but the reality is, if you're working a full-time job and getting all those calls and pumping money into that building, probably not the look you're
probably
going
not
for.
The right strategy.
But if you want to do it as like, hey, I want to learn the business, like we knew going in. So it was like, we never had that headache of, hey, this all sucks. So we're like, hey, the vision's bigger, right?
Yeah. You guys have been running the mobile home parks too. So you have lots of experience with that kind of stuff as well.
That's right. So I don't know. For me, you want to do it with enough scale that it makes sense. So the tough part is when people want to get in, they usually only have enough money for a small property. Yeah. Small properties, it's much, much harder to make money on because you have 4 units and one person leaves, you're 25% vacant. No one underwrites for that, right? So you want to either, in my opinion, and I think you either invest with someone or groups that are doing it until you can get to that level, or at least make the determination that you want to do it full time is kind of the big thing. But
what are your thoughts on someone? And I'm an amateur in real estate investing. We own a few properties, but amateur with it. Like if they do, they buy their home and they do top and bottom suite and renting out that way. How do you feel about that kind of structure?
And again, it kind of depends what you want. Are you wanting it because you want a nicer house and you need to help pay the mortgage? Probably makes sense. The one thing with top bottom, and we did have one initially. I actually have a house that has a suite. We just keep it for when guests are there, but the basement. But it's generally like that. Just my opinion. A lot of people won't long term want to stay in a basement suite. There's no sunlight, and it's very like you can feel that you're down there. And or there's issues with like up down tenant. The worst problem in the city with doing that, though, unless you're in like a very different neighborhood, there's almost nowhere where there's parking that permits it. So they give all these permits out, and like our house, for example, we have a driveway that can fit 1 vehicle, and there's no street parking. So if someone lived in our basement, they either park behind us or they so all those things are things where like on paper they're a great investment. It's like, oh, we make all this money. In reality, though, have I seen a lot of people do it to scale and it work good? Not personally. I'm sure there's people that do though.
Yeah.
It looks very good on paper though.
The next one is from the 369 Financial Podcast. He asked me some questions about the trailer park. I always love talking about the trailer park. That's where we got started in real estate. We learned a lot of really good lessons there. Check it out.
And I read an article, I think Forbes had put it out. It was called Mobile Home Park Millionaires. And it was on how at the time they weren't kind of the asset class they are today, but it was all these hedge funds were buying them up kind of all across the States and Canada. And it made a lot of sense. I mean, you only own the dirt, right? The tenant owns the actual house or the mobile home. So the idea is that there's a lot less maintenance. It's too expensive for them to move out. It seemed like a pretty good gig. And I read that article, and the one in the town I was from went up for sale right around the same time and got the numbers. Made a lot of sense. So
Made a lot of sense, and hopefully made you a little bit of sense too in terms of money.
yeah, it was a good investment. We I think like a lot of people who get into real estate, I got into it thinking it would be passive, and it definitely wasn't. It was a pretty stereotypical trailer park. There was drug dealers, drug users. It was kind of the whole thing. It had been run down, lots of old trailers. So we did a big flip on it. It took a lot of time, a lot of effort, but it worked out long term for sure.
What was like the craziest story about owning a trailer? Well, I don't want to say trailer park. I'll call it a mobile home park.
Oh, the craziest one. I don't know. Like I said at the beginning, we were so new at it. We had no idea really what we were getting into. And now, like with our company, we have a system and a process for everything. But back then, all the rent was collected cash, right? So we would go to every door and you'd collect cash or check, and that was cool because you got this huge stack of cash, right? But yeah, it was more on there was some on the criminal side, and we had to work with the police and stuff to get those people out. But I don't know. I probably have crazier stories now with multifamily. We got a lot more units, but
you're going from home to home collecting rent yourself.
Yeah, we were home to home. It was at that time. I think it probably still this way. We sold the park, but the water had to be read manually every month. We're north of the border, so that we get a lot of snow. So we had to go, trudge through the snow every month and read the water. My wife's water actually broke at the park reading water, and then we were there 3 days later renovating a unit with the baby. So it was kind of our life for a while there.
That's a total whirlwind.
Yeah.
Doesn't even seem like a real experience when you're in that moment in time.
No, but it was fun. We kind of my whole family, we always liked working and stuff. So it was, you were outside, and for the most part, it was a good experience.
Reading everything manually, that definitely gives you some appreciation for not having to do those sort of things with technology now with what you're doing currently at your multifamily apartments, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. And it was cool too, because I remember walking through the snow one day to read water, and the lot rent is a lot cheaper than like renting an apartment, right? Because you're just renting the lot, and people would always give you every excuse in the book why they couldn't pay their rent, just like in our business now. But you'd go through there and you'd see, a brand new vehicle sitting because you're at every unit every month, and you'd see a new TV box or a new vehicle outside, or they'd be smoking outside. And I'm like, well, you can afford all that, and you can't afford a few $100s rent. So you definitely cut your teeth as a landlord.
Can you recall the craziest excuse anyone ever gave you?
You know what? We had a tenant there, and she gave me all kinds of excuses that she had got sick, and then her kids were sick, and just everything you could imagine. And it was a pretty small community we were in, and that was kind of at the beginning of December. And then at Christmas, she posted a picture. Her and her husband had got brand new vehicles for his and hers vehicles for Christmas. So I remember that one, thinking that was kind of funny how that worked out. But
people just don't hold themselves accountable. And it seems like I don't know. It's like almost when you're at different levels in your economic state, it seems like those sort of folks, their mindset like holds them back from like holding themselves accountable, being able to follow through and do the things they need to do to perhaps get out of the mobile park and get into a nicer place like what you're doing now.
Yeah, and that I mean, in my opinion, that's kind of the system that's failed those people. It's not, most of them, they don't teach the financial education in school or anywhere. They don't know. You get the money and you spend it, and that's kind of the way our society is built. You have credit, and I don't think there's a lot of education for people out there, but yeah, we hear it all the time. Even now, people will say, "Oh, we can't pay the rent because we have bills to pay." I'm like, "Well, this is a bill to pay. Like, I got a mortgage on the building. I got to pay the taxes, right?" So it's where people put their priorities, and I think some of it's education based for sure.
Totally. And with owning a gym and then going into mobile parks, was there any overlap there that you took from what you learned at operating a gym that translated to success in real estate?
Um, I don't know. I guess just the overall, like, I guess it kind of gave us the confidence. Like, up until then, pretty much my entire family and extended family farmed. No one had really ran a business. So when we started the gym, it was kind of the first time in, and me and my wife did it. We jumped in, and, you learned retail and marketing and sales and all that stuff. But then once you do one thing, it kind of gives you the confidence. Had we not done anything to go buy a big park, you maybe wouldn't have had the confidence to do it because you would have had to figure everything out. But once you've done it and it was successful, you do the next thing. And then we bought a second park, and then we jumped into mobile home or multifamily. So I think it was more the confidence than anything, and how to deal with people. You'd have the same people couldn't pay their gym membership, right? It's all sales. It doesn't really matter what you sell. It's kind of all the same game.
The next clip is from David Nider. He has the First Responders Wealth Network podcast. It's got a great message. He's teaching first responders, how to invest, look at money differently so you don't have to rely on your pension. He's got a portfolio of his own. He's had on some huge guests on his podcast, Grant Cardone, Bobby Castro, guys like that. So go check out his podcast. It's really good. Here's the clip.
Your equity is always going to be your largest spread and your largest creation. I mean, that's where majority of us in the GTA or Ontario or really anywhere for that matter have been spoiled with that equity growth for so long. I'm a little, I wouldn't say hesitant, but I'm not as bullish on the equity growth that's going to continue moving forward. And I'm probably sounding like maybe my parents back in the day when they thought that maybe 20, 30 years ago as well, but it just continues to be going up and up. I just don't know, like, if it wasn't for example, if it wasn't for CMHC providing 50-year AM, 5%, 95% loan to cost to create new product, or even 95% loan to value in some of these projects with the value add stuff that I'm sure you're doing, um, nothing would be gobbled up as much unless you had a heck of a lot of cash to be putting down, So I don't know. I think things are going to be slowing down a little bit. That's just my personal opinion. What's your thought on it? Because I know you're a little more optimistic on the growth and the equity side.
Yeah, well, for me, growth isn't. I'm not looking at 2 years, right? I'm looking at 10. So the odds of something you buying a $20 million asset and it be worth less in 10 years is pretty
True.
low. So
True.
the other thing is, are you in multifamily or mostly single family stuff?
So up until this point, I've been doing residential multifamily. So it'd be like converting single family to 3 or 4 units. And then it's just up until this point, actually today, we're putting an offer in on a new build, but it's going to be a 10 unit. So nothing your size that you're doing.
Yeah. So it's if you're doing multifamily, you get it, but that's a little bit too, like, on single family stuff. Yeah, I wouldn't sit there and bank on appreciation forever, and I don't personally like single family. But with multifamily, you're somewhat in control of that, right? Because it's just net income, and there's a cap rate, and the cap rates don't fluctuate much. Like I said, we didn't see them come down when they should have. So you're in control of that. So if you can keep that building full, you don't have to push rents much, right? On a 100-unit building, you get a $25 bump. That's $600,000 of equity. So if you look out 10 years and you're like, can I get a 1.5% rent increase average over 10 years and add $6 million?
Definitely.
Probably.
Yeah.
Unlikely I don't. We're getting, $75 to $100 rent increases right now. So it's like, if you look out that way, it's like, yeah, I do think equity goes up. I follow real estate cycle, so I don't know if you've read anything on, like, that it's the 18.6 year cycle. Have you ever heard of it?
Not the 18.6. No.
No, you should, man. It's awesome, and no one really listen to it, but it's essentially a 20-year cycle. It averages out at 18.6. So in the theory behind it. It gives you all these reasons, but you can see it happening in real time right now. So it's essentially you have a recession, you have 14 years of pretty flat growth. It's just slow and steady, right? Then you have a flattening out period, and then you have hyper growth at the end for about 3 years. Now, if you look at that cycle, like in Edmonton, the last time that hyper growth happened, 2007 to 9, the average home price went from 100,000 to 300,000 in 2 years, right? I think we're coming into that period. I think from now until 26, 27 is when we start seeing that. The reason is we've been slowing demand supply, like we're building less today than we did in 1970, right? And we have 40 million people. We just hit 41 million. We just hit 40. Now we're at 41 within less than a year, right? But we build 200,000 homes. So this problem's been building for a long time, and it takes a long time. Like Edmonton, when I moved here, we had 7% vacancy. Then we had 5%, and this year, like they say the city, I think, is 2.6, something like that. Our actual vacancy for the last 3 months has been 0. And we don't have any in our portfolio. So that's happening. We're still immigrating the people in. So the way the cycle works, you now just imagine all these pent up demand, right? Even with single family homes, we used to build 1 house for every 4 new Canadians. We build 1 for every 25 today. So that market is just, we don't have the supply. When interest rates come down, when they start to come down, if I just paid 20 million for those townhomes, if interest rates were 2%, I would have paid 24, right? So I think that happens. The demand is there, and we're just based on rents. So in Edmonton, we're the 21st most affordable city in Canada, and we had some of the biggest rent growth, right? Our rents can double. We're more affordable than you guys in Toronto. So there's a lot of room. So yeah, I think prices go up, and then the crash. So the whole cycle works. You have everyone, once that starts happening, rates come down. It makes sense to build again. Hopefully Pierre gets in. He's going to implement all this stuff. He's going to slow immigration, and everyone's head's going to be down developing. Supply takes 2 years to come online. So it starts to come, and maybe the market softens, but everyone's like, hey, we're still getting rent growth, and they're building and building. And then all of a sudden it's too late. Now we have all these units come on, and then there's a correction. So I don't have a crystal ball, but if I were to guess, I'd say that's where I see it going. Could be egg on my face after this, but
no, I think historically, actually, I was just looking at a chart. I just shared it on my Instagram, but it just shows the increase in immigration versus homes built, and it's that spike in the last couple of years that's just like off the charts. And you're right, it is a 2-year cycle, and even down in the U.S. where I like a lot of areas down there too, is they were saying how everything you're seeing that's building was exactly that. It was 2 years ago product. And now there's going to be this influx of delay of hitting the market again because people aren't building. So yeah, you're right. It could be jumping up again with current assets that are already in place because of that reason. Because there is going to be a stall now in the next year or 2 with new product coming on.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many factors. Like if you just, people get, you get tend to sucked into the current trend. It's like prices are high, interest rates are up, nothing's moving. Look just macro, look bigger. You look at the construction industry where we have like 7 people retiring for every 1 that's coming in. So if we want to ramp up building, who's going to do it? Exactly. Who's going to build we can't do it. So, and a guy just put out a book. I don't know the exact name, but it was, I think it was called, like how to fix the Canadian housing crisis or something, right? And he lists a bunch of stuff in that book. And he said, if we did every single one, in 10 years, we would start to normalize the housing in Canada.
The next one was one of the first podcasts I ever went on. It was Jeremy's Deep Dive Real Estate Podcast. He asked me about building a personal brand. It's something I obviously like, and I've been working on the last year or so. So check out this clip.
You can get, the equivalent of a degree in any subject you want right now online for free, which 15 years ago you couldn't. Like even when I was a kid, we got our information from encyclopedias or like books. Like you just had no access to what you have today. So we definitely live in a good time for wanting to learn stuff.
What's an encyclopedia?
Yeah, most people probably don't know.
Or yeah, most people don't have an encyclopedia or a dictionary anymore because everything you need is online. So
yeah, And that's actually my first business I ever had. I got from, and I had read in an encyclopedia the clams would eat algae and in ponds and stuff. And I used to go down to the river like every day when I was a kid, and I found this pot where there was a bunch of like clams, and I'm sure they weren't the right type or anything, but I would collect pails of them and then go try to sell them to farmers to put in their ponds to eat the algae. So we did that for a long time and sold a few, but don't know if they work, but that's where I got the idea.
We do need more people like that, by the way. I'm already last year anyways, over my place in rural Alberta, there's a ton of algae. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping there are more people who are creative like that out there.
Yeah.
So one of the big things that I see you doing here recently is actually building a brand, not just around excess management, but around yourself. What kind of steps are you taking in order to do that?
Yeah, I guess I'm making an effort right now to do a little bit more on the personal branding side. There's things that I want to show that we do that it doesn't make a lot of sense to do on the company page. And I want that to be, for me as well, but also for our employees to be able to put stuff on there. I think it's a little more relatable when it is a person, talking about stuff. It's also more clear that it's me that's running that. I do run the excess one. I get all the messages and stuff, but it's not really clear that it's me running that. On the personal side, I've taken so much from other people as far as like knowledge and stuff. There's people doing it, but I do think there's a little bit of a void in real estate between like the really, really successful people start doing it and they're so big that it's hard to ever relate to those people. And then there's people that are kind of at the same level as everyone looking for that information. And so I think we're kind of in that in between where we have some scale. We're obviously going to grow a lot in the next 5 years. So we wanted to document that for people, people can kind of follow along and watch us. I think from an investor standpoint, we do syndicate money, we raise money for people to have access, kind of see what we're doing, have some idea of our philosophy, what I think and what our investment thesis is. I think that helps for sure with investment. Like there's the odd company that does some stuff like this, but a lot of the big real estate companies, you're not getting a lot of information. You don't know who they are. I think there's a big need and a big want for our generation or the generations below us. Like the biggest transfer of wealth in the history of the world is happening in the next 10 years. That's going down from a generation who could care less about social media to a generation who gets all their information from it. If those people have the opportunity to partner with or even just learn from, from someone in the industry that's relatable, younger, all that stuff, I think there's a big edge there opposed to some of these older companies who are used to doing things a certain way and aren't on that train yet. So, I mean, you've seen it work with a lot of people, and it's kind of a way we can give back and help people out. And I enjoy doing it. On the podcast side, we're going to bring on some guests. A lot of those people are just people I personally want to spend an hour with or whatever I learn from. So whether I think it'll benefit everyone, but it'll definitely benefit me as well. And
thanks for listening today. Like always, if you guys can subscribe, leave a rating, it goes a long way, helps us get out to more people. Thanks for today. We'll see you in a couple weeks.